various sessions all along today. We've been talking about robots, we've been talking about the future of AI with the open keynote. We've also discussed the development of AI, and then we got a first of kind panel with only women minister showing us the pathway on how to develop the digital in real way, in an effective manner. The three of them are very excellent and bringing some concrete results in their country with very impactful, tangible outcomes. And we discussed the robots, we discussed the agent and all these very complex and technical subjects. Now we would like to wrap up this discussion with some very insightful outcomes from all of you. And then I will start with a very simple question for all of you. When first you heard about open source and AI, what is the immediate things that you are thinking about? I will start with our Spanish colleague, please. Open source and AI in a few words for you.
So to me, it's openness and transparency, and I think those are two major values that we need to include in our development of AI. And I also, like the previous speaker also said, that there's nothing wrong with companies trying to look for their own economic benefits, but there's also nothing wrong to ensure that these economic benefits are also supported by a transparency and responsible development of technology that protects the rights of people.
Boss, please. USG.
So very quickly, for me, it is the usability, and the community dimension. That you have a community that has your back.
Thank you. I fully agree what has already been said. From Estonian side, I would add that it is a governance issue. It's not a technical issue. Open source is something that you have to put on the table as a default solution from the government side. Then, only then, you can fulfill all the values and goals you are looking for. Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving me the floor. For us, though, I'm going to repeat also what this being said by the previous speaker, Madam Minister, and the USG. For us, it's not only a technical principle, it's a strategic tool for trust, inclusion, innovation, and international cooperation. And also open standard, open technologies, and collaborative governance that can help bridge digital divide across the countries and regions, from developing and undeveloping countries also.
Thank you so much, and then I'll stay with that, the bridging the gap. I know how involved you are in that, making sure that no country is left behind. There is a big effort on the multilateral level, the global digital impact, the impact of the future, the global dialogue, the panel. There is a lot of effort happening at the UN. From a member state perspective, do you think that open source is getting enough space? How you see it that thing should be enforced within the multilateral, either within the multilateral, or how the multilateral could enforce the open source?
Well, of course, it's never enough what we can do to get bridges between regions and using the open sources. But I think with the work that the ODET is doing is good. We are going to the good path. Of course, we can improve, but for that we need many mandates. We need also support the offices. We have to create also the tools in our own governance at the UN for improving our work with us, the member state. But indeed, is needed. And I think we are in the right way here, working with the multilateral system.
Thank you so much. USG, about the multilateral issue. ODET was cited. What do you think ODET can do more?
Well, get the tech to work better always in the room with our colleagues from OICT. But I think today has been a good day in kind of the quality of the discussions, some of the new topics that have come in, robotics, for example, and the fact that we didn't lead with a policy-heavy agenda. We allowed the community to surface its own insights, its own concerns, the community of technologists. So in a sense, we successfully closed the gap between some of these high-level considerations in multilateral forums and what is happening on the ground in terms of the work of the people actually building those systems. So I think that is the big lesson for multilateral forums at a time of rapid change and questions about value add. We need to kind of bridge that gap between the abstract and the practical. So, you know, you saw with the turnout today, very strong member state turnout. In the morning, we had a panel with 3 women ministers leading the digital transformation in their countries, Jamaica, Morocco, and Sierra Leone. So that tells you something about the potential, the energy of this week. And we had the keynote from Jan Lekul, who I thought, you know, gave us a lot of food for thought in terms of what's the direction of the technology, the different angles this trajectory could take. And a very powerful lesson was that we should have hope that things could default to the small, the smart, and the distributed way of doing things, something that the open source community knows quite well. And I totally agree with the distinguished ambassador from Uruguay about the need for open standards, open infrastructure, collaboration to be catalyzed through more targeted work, clear mandates, and adequate resources for the UN system.
Thank you so much, Yuji. Excellency, I mean, at the multilateral level, we need, and it's clear that more effort is needed. What's at member state level?
I would say it's the same. Member states need interoperability within the technological world, and that means open standards, and that means open source. So it's simple as this. In Estonia, we have had a fully digital state already from 1990s, and we know very well from our experiences that the system we have based on X-Road, that is an open source, of course, that the interoperability allows us to go further on with whatever AI solutions, but we have to be not vendor locked. And that is important for every other country as well, because we are a small country, but whatever country in the world needs this interoperability and open standards. And let me give you just one example. In Estonia, we have e-voting. We just celebrated 20 years of that. So national voting and local voting is based on the technological possibilities. And even this is basically open source, audited by international independent auditors. And that shows the possibilities we have with open source and open standards. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Alberto, we discussed about open source, member states, multilateral, UN, but at the end, we need to implement that on the ground. And I know that you are leading a big effort in Spain around that. What does it really mean, finally, concretely, to bring that on the ground?
You think, let me also complement the previous speakers, but I think the first of all is that open source is a public policy, or it needs to be a public policy in member states. When we are developing technology that is basically serving the interest of our ministries, for example, we need to do that in cooperation with open source communities, because that's the way to bring back control to what is happening internally, digitally speaking. And then we need also to ensure that let's say the public sector is also putting forward resources for these technological communities to get together and to create more things. And one example of what we have done in Spain, we have created our own AI model, which is trained with almost 20% of data in Spanish, in order to counterbalance let's say the power that it has commercial models from big tech companies that are mainly trained in English. So this way we are able to somehow also reflect the values, reflect the history, and reflect the nuances of our language, which is Spanish, and it's also spoken across the world by 700 million people. So it's also encouraging member states or states to put forward the resources that can help these communities create more AI system. And then, if you allow me, I think I need to commend the work that UN-ODET is doing on this open source and bringing international community on open source here, because you guys matter. What you have to say matters very much to the multilateral system and to the international discussions that we are having. We are, I mentioned in my previous intervention, we are gathering in Geneva about the global governance of AI. What you have to say here needs to be also translated into what member states discuss, into what ministers discuss, and heads of the government and of the state. And it's important that we, that we close the gap, to build bridges, and this is a great work that you are doing, and needs to continue.
Thank you so much. So we heard about these different experiences. I'm looking at the Uruguay experience. Is this a very siloed approach? It sounds like a very siloed approach. Every country brings their own experience in building that. How the Uruguay is building the experience? Is there any digital cooperation that is framing that experience, building up on that, building open source inside of the digital transformation, digital cooperation? How it's being framed in Uruguay?
Well, I'm going to go to. Sorry. First of all, cooperation is always necessary. It's an umbrella that we have to work with between member states and also with the civil society, with all the companies, with the private sector. So cooperation is not only needed inside the government, with other member states. With you here, it's very important that it has to be back and forth and feedback, because we have to talk about an ecosystem and not about isolated. A member state isolated have no sense, because at the end what we want is the benefit of our population, development, more resources, more connections, and technologies, and emerging technologies, AI, and that are a challenge for us, especially if I'm speaking from the global south. Talking in national capacity, as Uruguay, we have created an agency to deal with this matter that is dealing with the digital agenda that includes digital government, open government, cybersecurity, data governance, digital citizenship, national strategies on AI, data, and cybersecurity. We also understand that digital transformation is not a journey that countries should undertake alone. As I said before, Uruguay has sought to share its experience with international cooperation, including South-South and triangular cooperation. In this regard, we participate also with our agency of cooperation itself in initiatives such as agreement between Uruguay, Dominican Republic, and Spain, financed by the European Union, which support the creation of the ICT Observatory in the Dominican Republic, the strengthening of Uruguay Armed Observatory, drawing on the Spain digital development experience. We also work with our agency, with NDP, supporting the implementation of the digital transformation of our government, our state, reflecting the importance of the partnership between national institution, international institution, cooperation agency, and the United Nations system. And this experience shows our openness, that openness is not only a principle, not a method of cooperation, and I don't want to still another speaker, but that is our more or less a general idea that how we are working and our concept of cooperation in this area. Thank you.
This sounds very inspiring for the global digital compact and the digital cooperation work we are leading. Hope that this is a good example to be taken into consideration and showcase it, because frankly, this is the first time I hear about that work we're doing. It sounds very great. So let me look at my colleague from Spain. You heard about the cooperation with Uruguay on that. So it's coming, it's being implemented. The digital cooperation is clearly the path for accelerating the uptake of the digital transformations and AI. Is the open source also beyond the digital cooperation a catalyzer for the digital cooperation?
Absolutely. I mean, the model I just mentioned is open source. It's available to everyone. You can download it, you can improve it, you can upload it again with your improvements. You can specialize it in different sectors. This is something that we need to get the communities to work on, because it's a public interest. It's value for everybody. In particular, Spain has been working with all the Ibero-American countries in order to ensure that, because you see, Spanish has many variants. The Spanish of Uruguay is not the same as the Spanish of Spain or the Spanish or the Portuguese of Portugal is not the same as the Portuguese of Brazil. So what we're trying to do is to ensure that the models of the system, they can somehow build on our history, on our tradition, on our nuances of the languages. But also what we're trying, that we need to go to the concrete level of the problems that people have in their daily lives, meaning restaurants, meaning shops, how they are adopting AI, how they can create AI systems, and the open source community can bring a lot of value into it. And at the international level as well, if you allow me, it's also important that there is more and more cooperation between countries, that the UN serves as a meeting point for all of us. For example, Spain has supported the UN-ODET in the creation of the laboratory called AI Governance for Humanity, that is working on a number of areas for the global dialogue on AI, but it can do much more. It can go into concrete solutions for countries that maybe don't have complete capacity, or maybe they need extra support, and then this can be somehow an enabler of creating more AI systems that solve real challenges of countries.
Thank you so much. Before going to USG, I'd like to question the Estonian minister on, you've been citing the X-Road project, one of the most famous project in Europe when it comes to the data exchange, and it was replicated across Europe, and then at some point it was even a question of upscaling it at the European level. I know the challenges you face in terms of data. We are talking about AI, but AI with no data, there is no real discussion. So open data was one of the leitmotif of building the X-Road. I'd like to hear about all the bottlenecks, mostly on bottlenecks issues that you can see happening now that we are moving into the AI era with the data exchange, which bringing a lot more value into the data. How do you think the future of the AI X-Roads?
Yeah, X-Road is an excellent, extremely cyber-secure way of data interoperability, and it is perfectly suitable for AI solutions because it has not only like a pipeline between different databases, but it includes computing capacity within this pipeline. And Estonia uses already more than 200 government services based on AI, but you asked about bottlenecks. And we have always been very open about the mistakes we have been doing throughout this long story. So if anybody is interested in mistakes, then you can just ask Estonia and you get good lessons from us. So one of the lessons was that we have actually stopped using all the sensitive data before the sovereign solutions with AI, because the data protection becomes so much important and turns to be the absolute most important point, that there should be no backdoors, the full sovereign solutions for the sensitive data. The second lesson learned is something I think we face all together, and this is that in democratic countries where we value very sincerely the rights of authors about their history books and whatever other information, we actually see, for example, the Russian bots spreading very intensively the false information and the propaganda to all the LLMs. So we all democratic countries are facing the situation where the bad guys are filling the AI systems with the propaganda and false information that might affect younger generations on a totally wrong way. And the good countries who are protecting the authors' rights and all these kind of things, which are very important. So the LLMs are closed. I was listening with all the pleasure the Spanish example about your history and culture. If we can't find together good ways to fill in the LLMs and the systems with accurate information about cultures, histories, narratives, identities, and again about histories, then we are losing our values, we are losing our most sacred feelings and understandings to the bad guys, and throughout the history this data falsification has always been used to prepare the great wars. So this is one of the lessons learned, that we have to act in a different way to feed the large language models with not only different languages, but also the histories, the cultures, the sounds, the voices, the pictures, the colors of each cultures. And this is one of the reasons we very highly appreciate the work that you are doing at the United Nations, because this is the very right and timely way to operate. But sorry, now I have such a negative information. You asked about bottlenecks. Maybe I will end with a positive note. So because we are so widely using open source in Estonia, we have been able to first to protect our cyber security is extremely strong, and this is because of open source. This is one of the values. And the second thing is we have had the possibility to export and upscale our solutions to 140 countries. So 140 countries in the world the governments use at least some components of our open source. So this is really that we are very proud of. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very insightful. USG, you have there's a multilateral happening at a small scale. How to take that, upscale it at larger scale, and ensure that no country is left behind when it comes to this global digital cooperation.
I think the Global Digital Compact called for these partnerships, this network multilateralism, and it's interesting the examples that were mentioned. So in the old days, we used to call them South-South and triangular cooperation, South-South-North, Spain, Uruguay, Dominican Republic, and others. The digital and emerging technologies turn is making such partnerships more interesting and more possible. So a concept from the past is being reborn in a good way with this technological turn, and that's why some of the other examples you could think of. Estonia's EXO, it traveled through the technical community to a much larger setting, which was India. So the data exchange layer in the India stack is inspired by EXO, and the carrier of that was the open source community, the coding community. So these kind of partnerships, these unusual partnerships, and sometimes some of this flows back to the global north from the global south. So those partnerships are becoming possible now. They're encouraged by the Global Digital Compact. And I think for AI, open source AI, open development AI in particular, they will be crucial because compute is scarce. It is locked up in a few geographies, it's costly. Talent is also highly concentrated in a few places. So countries, whether they are rich or poor, small or big, would have to network to be able to access compute, to be able to develop their own talent and perhaps work together on data sets, pool data sets, share use cases. If something has worked in Estonia, can it work in another place? If the Spanish supervisory agency's experience with startups is instructive for another country, so these things can travel through these networked approaches, and the open source community can act as a conveyor belt between these different geographical centers.
Thanks so much, Eugene. Yeah, indeed, there's a lot of to be done, and hopefully we can fill in the gaps and then avoid, when it comes to the AI, avoid the same issue that I will face when it comes to the digital transformation. I don't know of a lot about the digital strategy of Uruguay, but I heard that you are also collaborating with Spain and the Dominican Republic. So that is an international cooperation. It looks like it's into the DNA of the strategy, digital strategy, but the governance strategy. How does it impact the decision-making process, the design of the strategy? What is the component of international cooperation that is taken into account while building all these national strategy, mainly being under constraints of sovereignty, being under constraints of lack of computing and all these things? How this is taken into consideration?
Well, that is a very wide question. But I can tell that the government, we have a central role in a role to play. We are not only a regulator, or we create this, we collaborate with this ecosystem, public investor, standard setter, and major user of technology. Through procurement, public policy, international partnership, as you mentioned, government can steer innovation toward the public interest. This shows that the openness is not only about sharing technology, but also sharing knowledge, institutional models, and lessons learned. In the case of Uruguay, because everything is connected, and I know many of you are from private sector, unfortunately, I only see on you open sources AI or something like that. Next time you should know better who are all of you in order to also interact better. But for example, in the case of Uruguay, we export services. We have a very, very small country in the south, for those who doesn't know, between Argentina and Brazil. Our trade is based on food, but also we export services to around the world, and especially to the US. So we have to collaborate with the private sector, creating the infrastructure and the cooperation in order also to have the capacity building assistance to improve that sector. Everything is connected. We have a role to play as government to keep the regulations inside the government, but also collaborate with our partners in the region. But also since we have developed for the last 30 years a good private sector taking the hand of the government both together, we can export this model in the region. So for that reason, and even in the south, we have different stages of development in this area. So sometimes even we are not so developed as European Union countries or in the level that Estonia it is, we can also share our experience with countries like Dominican Republic. Also, we want to do it with countries in Africa to start to do inter-regional cooperation. But for that, we also need partners, like could be member states like Spain, could be the UN system itself. We also have a lot of cooperation with European countries, even with the EU as itself, but also with different members. So I think we try to do not just with, in general, with all the technologies, with the whole umbrella, all the emerging technologies, including AI, of course. And of course, regulation also trying to have an international regulation of the cyberspace, taking account with the examination before the bad use of these technologies.
Excellency, thank you so much. That's very insightful and very impressive what you've been saying on this openness from the way on Africa, the Caribbean region, South America. But I think that also the notion of South is a little bit moving from the geographical definition, seeing some of the North country coming to the South, because when it comes to the AI, they are very delayed, and then we'll welcome them at the South in the definition. But that's very impressive to see how the digital cooperation is a strong part of. Please.
And about what you mentioned, developing countries, we must ensure that we are not merely consumer of digital technology, but also active participants and contributor and co-create digital solutions. Even we know that not the main contribution and the main countries involved, companies involved on AI are not account. I think with my fingers I can count. We can collaborate and do partnership with those countries too.
Yeah, we need to start building that indeed. It's an imperative. We will be only consumer. What we consider today as very scarce and very available, like the AI, probably will be much rare in the future, and the access will be very limited to all the developed countries. And then we should not reach that point. We get back to Estonia because I know how advanced and beyond X-Road there have been many attempts also into building the DPR stack, building the OpenAI. There's a lot of lessons to be learned from the Estonian experience. The e-vote, I remember when first it was launched, and then all web open behind it, and the ID and all these elements, and the security and the cyber security. If we need to pack the stack or that vision and make it open. If we take the experience of Estonia and say, oh, let's make it open source. What does it require? What does it need? How to take it forwards, but also how to bring member states to adopt this kind of approach, or your solution, or the way you have designed your solution.
Thank you. As I said in the beginning, I truly think we are talking about the governance